The jury is set to begin deliberating Jodi Arias' fate, deciding whether she should be sentenced to life in prison or get the death penalty. Arias spoke to jurors Tuesday in the penalty phase of her murder trial, asking them to spare her life. She says she'd use her time in prison to bring about positive changes, including helping recycle trash and raising money for domestic abuse victims. The same jury earlier this month convicted the former waitress of first-degree murder in the 2008 killing of her one-time lover. Arias said Tuesday she lacked perspective when she told a local reporter in a post-conviction interview that she preferred execution to spending the rest of her days in jail. "Life in prison is most appealing outcome I could think of," she said inside the Phoenix courtroom Tuesday afternoon. "I can't in good conscience ask you to sentence me to death." After 5 months of trial, Arias told the jury she never meant to cause the family of Travis Alexander, who she killed, so much pain. The same jury convicted her of first-degree murder in Alexander's death. Arias admitted Alexander and said it was the worst thing she had ever done. But she stuck to her story that the brutal attack, which included stabbing and slashing Alexander nearly 30 times, shooting him in the head and nearly decapitating him, was her defense against abuse. Arias acknowledged the pain and suffering she caused Alexander's family, and said she hoped her conviction brought them peace. "I loved Travis, and I looked up to him," she said. "At one point, he was the world to me. This is the worst mistake of my life. It's the worst thing I've ever done." Arias' voice wavered with emotion as she read from a sheet of paper with Alexander's family looking on in the gallery. She said she considered suicide, but didn't kill herself after Alexander's death because of her love for her own family. She displayed a handful of pictures from her childhood, including photos of her family and former boyfriends. Arias said she regretted that details of her sex life with Alexander came out during the trial, and described the recorded phone sex call played in open court as that awful tape. The jury paid close attention to Arias as she spoke, their gaze turning to the large screen behind her as she ticked through family photos and explained the stories behind each image. Arias retained her composure throughout much of her statement, pausing occasionally as she apparently cried, but no tears were visible. Arias said during the years she has already spent in prison, she has been asked to teach Spanish or sign language, and she would now like to start a prison book club. Holding up a white t-shirt with the word survivor written across it, Arias also said she would sell the clothing and donate all proceeds to victims of domestic abuse. She said she understands that some people don't believe she was a victim of domestic abuse, but that she still sees that to be true. She showed the jury a picture of her best friend and said she didn't testify on her behalf because she received threats. Her lawyers have said Arias is the only witness they'll call to testify on her behalf. The judge instructed jurors they can consider a handful of factors when deciding what sentence to recommend, including the fact that Arias has no previous criminal record. The court went into recess after Arias made her plea and will reconvene later in the afternoon. At that time, closing arguments will be given and the jury will start deliberations. Judge Sherry Stevens explained to jurors that their decision would be final, emphasizing the fact that Arias' life is literally in their hands. "You will determine whether the defendant will be sentenced to life in prison or death," Stevens told the panel. "Your decision is not a recommendation." Last week, Alexander's brother and sister tearfully described for the jury how Alexander's death has torn apart their lives. Defense attorneys had planned to call witnesses, including a female friend and ex-boyfriend of Arias, to speak on her behalf. But after the judge denied all their motions on Monday, they said Arias would be the only one speaking to jurors.